We are live. Yay. So, so lovely to be here with my dear friend and colleague, Aubrey Moore. You can also find her Aubrey Ray on Facebook.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have a conversation with her because we have very maybe different, but interconnected fields of work, right? We work with women, we work with bodies, we work with, I call it an embodiment, but
Mhm.
it could be called many things, of just being in your body, connected to your body, and in love.
Mm.
In a love relationship with the body, right? Since we experience the world through our body, I think my work has really been about how do we make peace? How do we make peace with this body of ours?
Mhm.
So I would love to have Aubrey just introduce herself real quick.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on your channel. I'm very excited to be here. So yeah, my background is in many different things. I think most importantly, for those of you who don't know me, is I'm a woman. I'm a human being, just like all of you. And just like all of you, I don't have all the answers, and I'm going through my journey of life and my journey with my body too. And on my journey, I have discovered and added things to help me with embodiment. I like how you put that, and really to just fall in love with myself um, over and over and over and over again. And so some of those things are I am a scientist by trade. I have a degree in chemistry, and I was a scientist for a few years, which gave me a lot of insight into the scientific method and a lot of appreciation for experimentation, which I also kind of use synonymously with play, playing, experimenting. And it's also why I make spreadsheets about everything in my life. Um, then I moved into, actually, I was a recruiter for about 6 or 7 years, and I was a manager of other people, which kind of opened my world into coaching and working with other people in a way that is empowering and helping them to succeed or helping them to achieve whatever it is that they want to achieve. And that just felt really good to like be that person, have that role in a person's life. Um, and after, during, I should say, the pandemic, when it was really at the beginning in 2020, I made some pretty significant moves in my life to reconnect myself with my body and my own desire. And I became a clinical sexologist, and I quit my corporate job. I quit being a manager, and I opened up my own business. It's called Pleasure Roots, which is my way of serving others. I've always felt very strongly that it is my purpose to like serve people in on this earth. And for the first half of my life, or the first like 30 years, I was like doing it very unhealthily. I was forgetting about all my own needs. And through my sex coaching certification and many other little workshops and ways of diving into myself, I've learned that, oh, this is how I can help people, and how I can help women in particularly. So now what I do and what I love to share is that I help women discover and explore their sexual desires safely. And I teach them how to communicate with their partners if they need that, so that they can actually have like pleasurable sexual experiences. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful, which is really important, really,
Hmm.
really important. Um, and I love that you So I'm a body worker by trade and have been a body worker for many years. And there, and I've mostly worked with women, but some men,
Yeah, same here.
actually quite a few men. But what I noticed is that I was a rolfer for a while, so I still do some rolfing, but I've changed a little bit. But I have people stand in front of me, right? Unclothed, sometimes bra and underwear, and there's this evaluation, right, which is
Mhm.
really weird, but and but what I get is from women especially is I get insight into their relationship with their body and how they view themselves and how uncomfortable most of us are in our body.
Yeah.
We evaluate ourselves. I usually have women start with a list of what's wrong with them and
Mm.
what's working and what's bad. Um, and reasons why things are the way they are, right? That there isn't a softness towards the body. It's like
Yeah.
it's like it's almost like I'm not in my body. I'm just going to evaluate it from up here.
Yeah. Neck up is what I call that.
There's also this sense of, it's like when you talk about your child or you talk about somebody when they're sitting right there. Do you know what I mean? That it feels really weird to be talked about.
Yeah. Oh, I've never heard it put that way.
So it's like, okay, but do you feel what you're saying about your body? Do you feel how you view your body? And
Yeah.
that's really always struck me so much.
Mm.
How little pleasure we have just in simple experiences.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you find that when you're going through the list, right, of okay, what do you not like? What do you think needs to be fixed and stuff? Do you find that they're kind of like in that dissociative state when they're doing that, like not really feeling what they're saying, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm just looking at movement patterns. I'm just looking at their
Mm,
bones and I'm looking at things that they're not aware of what I'm looking for. Like I'm looking at the
right.
pull of the skin or how the shoulders pulling back or the pelvis is turning to one side or how one leg, is not integrated well under the pelvis. Like I'm looking for stuff like
Oh, you're that kind of sorceress. Ooh, okay.
is their pelvis and their pelvic floor stable on one side and that, where's their breath? Like I'm looking at that stuff, but they see me and they're thinking they just start telling me what's wrong.
Right,
I
right.
don't even ask. um
Yeah.
but yeah, I feel this sense of uh like you're looking at me, so I have to validate me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's really wild.
I experience that a lot too in my work because again, what women come to me for is they're like, I don't know what I want. I don't know what I like. I want to understand like my own desire, or I have a low libido. That's like a popular term, right? And it's just like, to me, low libido just means that you haven't found the right stimulus for yourself yet. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. There's just, you haven't found the right thing for you yet. And most of us grow up in a setting where that exploration of finding what works for you is met with shame and or punishment even sometimes. And so then as an adult, it becomes very difficult then to explore this even with yourself because you have all these layers and these stories that you've accumulated over the years. That's part of your own programming and so on. And so I face kind of the same thing in a different way with people sharing their desires. Um, when we get there, and sometimes it takes some time to get there, uh, it's like sharing and validating why they like it. Well, here's the reason why I like this, and I hope you don't think it's weird. All these different things come up. It's yeah, it's
Yeah,
grounded in a lot of shame.
it's really interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so can you just define, I mean, I have met sexologists, but I haven't had it defined, I don't think. I've
Yeah.
even websites and I don't, and there's a lot of information. So is there something that's maybe more concise?
Well, I'll try. I'll do my best. My understanding and my definition of it from that I got from my sex coaching school, which was called Sex Coach University. Super subtle, I know. I loved it though. It was great.
Find it.
Um, yeah, I found it really easily. Um, they define it as a clinical sexologist is somebody who can, or a sexologist, I'll say, is somebody who studies human sexuality, the actions, behaviors, and thought patterns of human sexuality, and or who is studied in it. But I mean, you just become studied in something, like you continuously study it. And then the clinical piece just means that I am able to see clients professionally.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my shortened definition of it.
Okay.
And also, you know, and you probably are very familiar with this in the coaching world, right? There's really no like regulation, you know, like there's not like in universities we have like the accreditation system and things like that. Like in coaching, it's still this like gray area that has no governing body. And so that's why it's very important for if you're hiring a coach, if anybody's watching this and they're thinking of hiring a coach, that you really understand like how they became one, you know, because anybody could really call themselves a coach, right? Without um, either experiencing the things that they're coaching on, and or learning or going through some type of training about the things that they're coaching on. Both things I think are very necessary. The
Yeah.
latter more so, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So that's
Um,
my definition.
no, that's helpful again, because I've been on websites. Most people do a few things, right? That
Mhm.
other, not just other skills, but there's a trajectory of how they got to focusing just on sexology, right? Like
Yeah,
either they're a therapist or they have some other tangential kind of working with people thing. Um,
right.
and yeah, I've also just been curious for my own self. And I think that, again, just being a woman in a body and what we're our experience in the
Yeah.
world. I had a woman just say offhandedly, "Oh, you know what it was like to be a woman in the 80s and just having that having that the way men looked at you and treated you." And it just made me kind of go back in my head and go, "Well, yeah, but I just thought that was normal."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like this, and it's something that I've always, right, that has impeded my own sexuality journey, is
Hmm.
being treated objectively or
Like an
as
object.
an object from a very young age.
Yeah.
Um, and living in a community where there weren't boundaries, right? There
Hmm.
was violation of the law. There weren't boundaries. It's just
Hmm.
words, um, body expression,
Hmm.
um, demeaning words,
Yeah.
showing a body, but
Yeah. Yeah.
inappropriate, completely inappropriate. But how that becomes normalized, right? Even just how women are, how we treat. I mean, I remember being at a certain, when I was 14, I shaved my head because I was like, I don't want any more male attention.
Wow, that's awesome. That is so radical of you. What?
And I shaved my head and I went punk. I was like, that's it. Um, and it worked, but then I went and
Yeah.
swung the other way because it gave me control over the narrative, right? It gave me a little bit of separation, because I was no longer an object.
Mm-hmm.
And then I
Mm-hmm.
went the other way of like dressing very provocatively, because I was like, well, let's just play the game.
Yeah.
Let's just play the game.
Yeah.
Because I don't play the game, I get backlash.
Yeah.
Call somebody out, I get backlash. So let's just play the game.
Play it.
And
Mm.
what that does to just our sense of
Worth.
value, yeah, our worth, our value as women,
Mm-hmm.
own ownership over sexuality, right? That our sexuality becomes a possession of another.
Mm-hmm. And so does our pleasure, and so do our orgasms in
Yeah.
this type of dichotomy, right? Like it's like I hear so many times, my husband doesn't know how to make me orgasm. And it's like, okay, and just in the language itself, it's like, well, there's an issue with that because he or whoever your partner is not actually responsible for making you feel any sort of which way. That's like I was just reading today in a book called Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg, that he's talking about expressing anger, which is a journey that I'm on right now. And he was talking about the difference between stimulus and cause. What is the stimulus of your anger? And then what is the cause of your anger? And so it's similarly in the situation, yes, there are things that are stimulated by another person or what they do or what they say, but the cause of you feeling pleasure is actually internally within you in whatever story it is that you're telling yourself. Um, by the way, I have so many like comments on the things that you just said. Going back to when you shaved your head just for a moment, because one of my like absolute role models, and I'm actually in another certification program through this woman. She's no longer living, but her name was Betty Dodson.
Mhm.
And she was a pioneer in sexual education and feminism. And she created these groups called Body Sex that were like conscious raising groups in like the 70s. Anyway, now you can get trained in those things, which is what I'm in. But she did the same thing. She like left Kansas, where she grew up, and she moved to New York and she shaved her head. She was an artist too, so she was like, it. And she shaved her head, and because she was so sick of this male attention that you're talking about, really inappropriate um male attention. And once she did, it just stopped. And actually people avoided her as well. And so I love that you experimented with that at such a young age too. That's quite remarkable. Yeah, so cool. Um, and then you talked about playing the game a little bit there, which I never really thought of it that way, but I think I played the game too, especially when I like discovered that I had like boobs and stuff. Like whenever I learned that, oh, I have these things that men like. And how I learned about sex growing up, well, it was from a few different sources, right? From school, it was mostly just like fear, like don't get pregnant, don't get disease. It's like so scary. Like, okay, I'm never having sex in my life. And then there was some shame happening from like my peers, right? Because I grew up in a small town in Kansas. There were like 2,000 people. It was mostly, how do I say, economically ran by people of Christian faith, which there's nothing wrong with people of Christian faith, but typically they were quite against comprehensive sex education and talking openly about it, and so were their kids. So if I wanted to make out with my boyfriend, I was slut shamed, right? Or if I wanted to have sex with him, I was slut shamed. So there was some fear happening, then there was the shame happening, and then my mom, thankfully, was such a shining light in all of this kind of darkness. And she taught me that, it's completely normal to have sexual urges, and here's how you do it safely. She took me to be on birth control and get condoms and stuff like that. Um, And she wouldn't like freak out about things that I asked her. You know, it was, I could come to her and it was like a normal conversation about anything else, which was really nice. I think that's so important. It's probably why I am doing what I'm doing today, honestly. But the main slice of the cake of my sexual education came from porn. And I remember it like it was yesterday because it was so exciting. Like I was sitting on the couch in the middle of the night after everyone went to bed, and I was like, it was on mute because there was no way anyone was going to hear what I was doing. And I was on the adult channels, and I was just enamored. I was like, wow, is this what I get to do when I grow up? Is this what women are like and men are like together? Like it was so interesting to me. I felt like a freaking alien studying human sexuality already then. And let me try to figure out why I got on the story. I think this is where I learned the power of playing the game, because I learned from porn that I could perform. It was my job really to perform, and also that pleasure really wasn't for the female, it was for the male. Sex ended when he, you know, came all over the place. And so when I got into like college years and I realized like, oh, so this is what men like, instead of, I guess, pouting about being objectified, which I'm not saying that if you are objectified that you're pouting, but that's was my experience of it. I didn't want to sit in it like that. I just was like, well, I'm just gonna have sex with whoever I want because because I'm a woman and apparently that's my power in this world. So I played the game a little bit too. However, I will say that um, through all those wonderful, different, diverse sexual experiences that were pretty fun, I probably only orgasmed like a handful of times. You know, it was a lot of performance. I'm the queen of faking orgasms. Like I should probably get an Oscar for it, like I should have in my 20s. Um, but that was kind of how I played the game a little bit, was like feeling a little bit of power and still getting slut shamed about that too. Um, so yeah, I guess that's all I had to say about playing the game. I hope that made sense. My
It did. And I would also say just that I felt like I played the game, meaning catered to the feelings of the men.
yeah,
When I could tell there was a sensitivity, or if they wanted to say whatever they wanted to say, instead of don't talk to me that way.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I know there's more subtle ways to say it, but it was, when I was young, I was like, don't talk to me that way.
Oh, yeah.
There would be a backlash. But
Yeah,
if I played the game, it was more like I'm taking care of your feelings, so because I don't want to feel the backlash. I'm
yeah,
ma- I'm making you feel good about yourself.
yeah. That's what I was doing too. I just in a different way by faking orgasms, right? I was worried that I was going to make them feel bad, or I was concerned that I was too different if I was asking for something specific, you know? So totally, I did the same thing just in a different way.
But I see that in our culture, right? So much of
Hmm.
taking care of, I mean, I think that we as women do that anyway, but taking care of other people's feelings, taking
Yeah.
care, even just this, um, yeah, this distorted masculine need to kind of have power over women, right? That we really want partnership with.
Yeah.
So, instead of like, oh, I'm gonna, and sometimes, yes, make them feel like they're big, strong man, but it's also, not at the expense of ourselves.
Yeah, not at the expense of
Not at the
objectifying us, right? Something oh, that's another thing I wanted to say with you. Objectifying, somebody said this. I don't remember who it was. I feel like it was like a celebrity maybe. But they said, I don't want to be the object of pleasure, of someone else's pleasure. I want to be the subject of pleasure. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it goes back to, right, that and you touched into this before, but it's like pleasure being in the hands of somebody else. And we are taught that. I mean, as women, we are kind of taught that our bodies, right? We go to a doctor,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
knows what's going on in our body.
Mm-hmm.
They look, they have the responsibility of looking under a blanket or a sheet through a speculum into our into our vagina. And I'm like, you know, can we just can you just take the sheet off and show me what you're looking at so I know what's going on with my body, please? Like, like, can I have some say,
Mm-hmm.
right, in my body? And I think that like I get really weird when I go to the OBGYN. I'm like, no, no, no sheet.
Yeah. Oh, I like that actually. I think I might actually request that next time.
Here. Just because I think it's like you don't need to protect me from myself. It's my body. I want you to work in partnership with me. Like, it's a conversation because I'm the one that's with my body. I need to know how
Mm-hmm.
to track changes in my body as I get older and how to, you
Yeah.
know, even know when I'm ovulating or know when my period's coming or hasn't come or,
Yeah.
you know, mucus changes, like things that are really important.
Yeah. Yeah. In my program, so I have a 4-month program. It's called Awaken Your Desire. And in the middle of it, um, we become friends with our vulvas because I'll probably say, I mean, I definitely got a mirror or like made some crazy, like got up on the bathtub and did some crazy acrobatic stuff to look at my own vulva when I was a kid. But it probably wasn't until like 3 or 4 years ago that I actually like looked at her for quite some time and started to like become friends with her. She's got a name, her name's Temple. She gets very excited when we're being interviewed, by the way. So just it's normal. But that's something that's very important because like you said, there's like a sheet over it, or there's like it's being covered. And we're different than men. We don't have our privates just like in the front of our body. So when we look down, we get to see it all the time, which by the way, I think is really cool. And I kind of wish sometimes I had a penis, just for like a day so that I could understand what that's like. I say that to my boyfriend all the time, by the way. And he's like, this is what you would do if you had a penis. And then he does like the helicopter thing. And he's right. I would absolutely do that for like the first 10 minutes. And then I would, discover other things.
You're like, what's next?
What's next? But I know I'm being facetious here, but um it's like covered all the time. I mean, we're always, it's covered by underwear and that's, has some necessity to it and some comfort, right? But we don't really see, meet, speak with, engage in any way with our vulvas. So it is not a surprise that we have feelings of shame or embarrassment or confusion about that area of our body, you know?
Interesting, because it's like that area, which is again talking down at, it's like it's actually a very
Well, it is physically down from us, from our heads.
like from the felt sense, I can feel my vulva the way I can feel my legs, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Sorry, I can feel my breasts, right? I can feel them all the time.
Right.
It's just interesting that kind of down there, even though my sense ideally is in my whole body.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny how we're wired. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it goes back to that heart sport, right? There's one other thing I wanted to say, and I don't know if I can remember it. Oh,
Notepad. Look at all these things I've been writing down. I cheat, man. I cheat. Plus, I just like to have something in my hands, I think.
And I know that you wrote a book on self-pleasure, right?
Yes, I did.
Which I'm still I'm still gonna order, I promise. Um, but I've been on my own journey, which has been interesting,
Great.
really helpful to take somebody else away from
Mm,
my pleasure,
yeah.
to just explore what feels good right now, today, in this moment.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it changes, and my body's changing as I get older. And
Hmm.
so that's also interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
My just, I don't know, it's just fascinating. I think just touch, like sometimes it's hard to get somebody else to touch you the way you want to be touched. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
to act, we have to show and we have to teach,
We
and
have to direct, we have to coach.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's fine. That's part of intimacy, is like really speaking and being heard and being met.
Hmm.
But having that with ourselves is so fascinating, right? Just well, I don't know how to touch. Oh, okay, how about this? Or, that
Right.
that feels really good. Or that felt good yesterday, but I want something different today.
Right. I'm really gonna think you're gonna love like the middle four chapters of my book because it's like wildly different nights, of masturbation. And so I want to speak to a couple things you said. And I talk about this in my book as well. But first, like the communication piece, right? Like, and this is why I stand behind like self-pleasure will build inner trust. And it did for me and continues to, because the amount of time, I guess we'll say time, it takes for your brain to tell your hand what to do or to tell another part of your body what to do, and then for it to actually happen is like, it's like under a second, right? And so when you are giving yourself pleasure, you're also receiving that pleasure. So it's like a really interesting dynamic of giving and receiving from the same source. And you know that it's true for you because you're the one feeling it. So it's like, it seems like the most inexpensive and fun way to build inner trust that I have found as a woman walking this earth. And when you think about that communication relay, um, and how much different it is when you bring another person in there, because then it's like, okay, I have to first of all feel into what I want in this moment, which you so elegantly put, it changes all the effing time. So you have to figure out what you want in that moment. Then you've got to figure out the language if you're with a partner, figure out the language then, or movement, doesn't always have to be a language, to then like communicate that to them. So then they can give that to you. And while you receive, and you have to also coach them and direct them if they're not really doing it the way that feels right to you. And so there's a lot longer of a relay that's happening as opposed to when you're, just by yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think it's so important for women to have that. I guess I didn't really think about this until we just started talking, but I think it's also important for women to have like that like direct line, to their own pleasure because, if sexual pleasure, okay, if I have only experienced sexual pleasure through another person and it takes like several different sexual experiences with this person to finally feel the pleasure I'm looking for, like it's gonna get exhausting. You know, I could see how that would get exhausting for a woman, and for the man too. And so, yeah, it's so important, I think, to have that direct line of pleasure. Um, and you also mentioned taking out the other person, which is like life changing to me. I absolutely love having sex with my partner, and I wouldn't change that for the world. And it's a completely different experience than having sex with myself. And that's okay. They're both extremely wonderful for different reasons. And when I have sex with myself, I am less likely to feel the thoughts of judgment of like, I'm taking too long, or I wonder what they think of this like noise I'm making, or like, what if I accidentally fart? Like, like all these different thoughts happening in my head that typically, like, even if they are around, they're not staying for that long because there's no one else to be worried about. And in fact, a lot of the time when I'm in my solo self-pleasure practice, my mind is utilized in fantasy, and it enhances my pleasure practice. And so yeah, it's so I can't stress enough how important it is to have solo pleasure for the reason of helping to melt away judgment and like actually experience pleasure without that present, to understand what you like, because how are you ever going to tell another person what to do or how to be if you don't know it in your own body, right? And there's like a million other different reasons why, which I can go into. But those are the main ones I wanted to talk about because it's related to what we were just talking about.
I also think there's something about, I feel like I'm a better partner because I know how to please myself, and I know how to ask, and I know what it feels like. So I know how to offer it, and I know what my body likes. I know,
Mm-hmm.
so it's like I know how to adjust and move. Um,
Well, and somebody listening might be asking themselves, how does that make you a better partner? So I love to ask you that.
Meaning, because, well, one, I was going to touch on this, and I was questioning whether I should, but I think because for a long time, because when I was young, I had, right at about 11 in my developmental age, I had somebody else, um, insert his sexuality in a way that was inappropriate,
Mm-hmm.
a boundary violation. And it wasn't extreme, but it was enough
Right.
that it's very confusing. And so what it's helped me, I think, being in relationship with my own body is, one, it's my body, it's not somebody else's
Mm-hmm.
intervention.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was, I don't really want to fully get into it, but there were, times he would just slip his hand under my shirt or in my mouth,
Mm.
something like that, right?
Yeah.
Completely appropriate for
Completely
him.
inappropriate.
Um, and so it was part of me taking ownership back over my body, of like, my sexuality is mine and it doesn't belong to anybody else's, and nobody else can have it
Yeah.
or take it. Um, but it's also just, if I can give myself pleasure and feel safe in my body, or understand the levels, the different levels of pleasure, or the different ways that I experience pleasure, I'm a better partner because I feel like, um that I can find those places in myself with somebody else, that the fear part that I
Yeah.
used to have a lot has shifted, right? It's no longer about other person being questionable. It's like, this is my sexuality and I'm sharing it with somebody else.
Mm.
And because I'm sharing it with somebody else, it's like I can allow them in and into the places that feel right, all the different places that feel desiring of,
Mm-hmm.
need or
Yeah.
excitement or
Mm.
just softness, whatever it is.
Yeah. It's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
That was I was not going to go there, but But I think there is so much boundary violation in sexuality in
There is.
so many ways. And
Yeah, I think our definition of consent is pretty warped. I think it's a model that is like permission and permission and then granted, type of thing, which doesn't really leave a lot of room for desire or like fun or like sexiness. It's kind of exhausting, right? For both parties. And so when we have like, okay, this agreement between two people, and each of those two people they're responsible for their own boundaries and for their own things, then it's a bit more collaborative. And it's like you can go into a situation, as me as a recovering people pleaser, I can go into a situation sometimes with the thought of this person's going to take care of themselves and I don't have to take care of them. I just have to take care of me, you know? And sometimes if I'm feeling those like patterns come up, um, then it signals me to then pause for a moment. Like here's a good example. Like earlier this year, my partner and I were getting down and we were having sex, and I was just having trouble experiencing orgasm. And the part of the reason for that was because I was trying to get there. I was trying to like force it, doesn't work. And the reason why I was trying to force it was because I was afraid I was taking too long. So I was afraid that he was going to get disinterested. I was afraid that he was going to be like sitting here for a long time thinking I'm taking too. So all of my energy was not even on me. It was on him, my partner. And so when I recognized this after maybe 15 minutes or so, I finally just said, we have to stop. He was like, yeah, I think we should take a break. I was like, I need a break. And he just like laid on top of me for a little bit. That's like the best way to like calm me down. And then afterwards, when we just breathed together for a moment, it was like chest to chest. We just breathed for a little bit. And then we came out of it and I said, okay, I think something that would be really helpful for me right now is if you tell me out loud that I can take as much time as I need. Because I'm worried that I'm taking too long, and that's what's getting in the way for me. And it's really distracting. And it's hard to feel pleasurable things right now from our experience. And he said, okay, you can take as long as you want. He's like, we don't have anywhere to be. It's this time. Who cares? We can have dinner at midnight. Like, he was really good about it. And that was super helpful, And so like, yeah, I feel like these like, and that right there is just like, well, it's an example of communication, an example of like a negotiation. And it's also an example of like adjusting kind of like agreements between us. I mean, before we have sex, we don't always talk about agreements because we've been together for 4 years now. So we don't need to really, sit down and go through our agreements before every sexual experience. But it was kind of our way of saying, hey, like, I feel like I'm dipping into your stuff. And that's an old pattern of mine. So I'd like to return back to me. And I need to know that you're gonna just worry about you.
that's
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, there is that pleasure. I mean, I think that's also the the faking, right? Part of that.
Totally. From my Oscar years, coming back.
Yeah, I think it's important even to just say, can we take a break and maybe just kiss my neck or
Mhm.
massage the backs of my legs or massage my, trace my outer hips, like whatever,
Yeah.
like this is what I need to feel like I don't have to please you, but I
Mhm.
need a little extra.
Yeah.
A
And
little
I and I also think that like we don't really see, of course, in mainstream porn, it's like it starts with everybody's wet, everybody's ready to go. There's no breaks. It's like 10 minutes and then that's it. And so it's like the most unrealistic version of what actual human sexuality is like. I think I say this in the book, like learning to have sex by watching mainstream porn is like learning how to drive by watching a NASCAR race. like, it's totally unrealistic.
Like
And
like witch movies.
yes, exactly. And it's just not reality, really. And so taking breaks is a big piece of my solo pleasure practice and my partnered pleasure practice. Like we take lots of water breaks, lots of pee breaks, whatever we need to do to take care of our own bodily needs.
Back, pull the massage oil out. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and being a Virgo, I'm like, I so prepare for everything. And so like we also schedule our sex sometimes. So the other night I was like, so we're doing it tonight, right? And he's like, yes, yeah, we are. And I was like, okay, good. I've got the towels, I've got the lube, I've got the toys over here just in case we need to use any. Like I just have everything in its place. It's ridiculous. So ridiculous. It's
That's
really
good.
fitting for me.
Good. Love that.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to be conscious of time. So,
Well, I can tell from the sweat rolling down my back that we've been here for about an hour.
okay. So are there any final thoughts you have? Yeah, we didn't really get to some other stuff, but we can do that another time. I think this was a really great conversation. I think that it's empowering for women to talk about sex, their bodies, their sexuality, how they feel about their bodies,
Mhm.
even where they came from, right?
Mhm.
Familial view of sexuality and body and how that's been passed down or
Yeah.
lineage. Like it's very important because one, it just frees us to be more of who we are. And then it frees us. I love what you said about right now. I have a 15 and a half year old boy who's sexually active. And I was always like, what am I going to do when we get to that part of the journey? But it's been the sweetest, most
Mhm.
amazing thing. He had a girlfriend a few years ago and he was kind of like, this is my woman. And I was like, you're 12. Okay, you're going to make a great husband, but I don't know how you're going to make it through the teenage years. But so this is his second girlfriend. She's a year older. And it's just been really amazing. Like they
Oh,
started dating and her mom texted me because we know each other through school. And she's like, oh, I think our kids are an item. Let's have dinner. So
oh,
we all went out to dinner.
I
I
love
met the
that.
grandparents, the parents,
Wow.
dinner together. We've had dinner many times. We do things together.
Yeah.
We all had the conversation about not all of us in the room together, but
Yeah, maybe not with the grandparents, but
about sexuality and, what are you guys using? And, you know, right. Do you know what are you using? That was my first thing is like, I want to make sure she's covered because
yeah. Do you know what you're getting into right now? Like, do you know
like
if the consequences of not
have
doing this safely?
her
Yes.
birth control, you guys all know. Um, and it's just been really amazing.
Oh, I love that.
Getting them to like, he could stay over there and sleep in a separate room and she could come over here and I would leave. But like there would be just
Oh,
space enough for them to be sexually active. We're all aware of it. We all communicate about it. I keep asking him questions just about how is it? How are you guys doing? How's the communication? We haven't really got to, the like technique part, but I'm going to leave that a little bit.
oh my gosh. I love this. I love hearing this. This is like making my heart melt. This is beautiful.
But it's like, I didn't have that with my mom.
Yeah.
So much fear around sexuality.
Mhm.
And like, I just want him to know that it's okay. It's
Mhm.
totally okay. It's normal to
Natural.
want to have sex with your girlfriend. It's a normal desire. And we're just going to make sure that you guys are safe and don't get pregnant. And
Yeah.
that you feel safe, but it's sweet. Like it's sweet. You can tell there's a lot of tenderness between.
Yeah. That sounds really tender and sweet. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I'm so glad you just told me that. That's absolutely wonderful.
It's the way that we get to bring it forward,
Mhm.
right? That a lot
Mhm.
of this is sometimes we're afraid to actually have these conversations, but it's really what for our benefit and then for our, for our family or, for the girlfriends who also need help, for the children that may also need help, for the nieces and nephews that need help.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, how the a way to end this. Which by the way, like just because I'm sweating, that doesn't mean we have to end. I just wanted to make that clear.
Want to don't want to overwhelm people with, oh, it's too long.
Information. Yeah, yeah, totally get it. We'll just come back and do it. We'll run it back again. But yeah, I think, what you just said was beautiful, like just having a space to talk openly about whatever it is that you're experiencing or maybe that you have experienced, including the really wonderful things too. Like, like I think when we talk about sex and it's tabooism and how we don't talk about it, it's because there's a lot of negativity and trauma, and those things do exist, but there's also a lot of beauty in it as well, like you just shared. And so those are important things to share too, because then it's kind of gives people another avenue outside of this like fearful, shameful avenue that we're so used to. Um, and so yeah, I guess I just want to end with like offering like if you want to talk about this, then find a trusted friend or a trusted colleague maybe depends on where you work, um or myself or Padma, like we do this professionally. We're here to listen and to witness you. And I've had women who when they reach out to me, they're just like, and we get on the phone and they're like, I'm like, what do you want out of this call? And they're just like, I don't know. And then by the end of it, they're like, I think I just wanted somebody to talk to. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, sometimes that's all we need, is just to be like seen and heard and witnessed. And so, yeah, I just want to offer that.
In a safe space where there
Yeah.
isn't judgment, there isn't an agenda or a
Yeah. Yeah.
strive.
Maybe don't go to the friend that's like going to judge you all the time. Don't go to that friend and talk about these things. But yeah.
Yeah, and some of these things are tender, and not everyone likes to talk
Mhm.
about their feelings, talk about their vulnerabilities, talk about things that scare them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so finding somebody who's able to walk with you into those places and give you even the capacity to have those conversations.
Mm. Yeah. Beautifully said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so, so, so much. It has been an absolute pleasure. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'd love to do it again.
Okay, good. I just kind of like said that and I was like, well, I hope she
No,
feels
no,
the
no.
same way.
So I'll put our information in the bio below, and you can reach out to us if you want, and look us up.
Yeah.
And I'd also love to hear, some feedback. And if it's too public of a place, then you can message us personally, but you know, share what's going on with you. We'd love to
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah, I usually talk to people through like Facebook Messenger a lot, because that seems to be a nice medium of like it kind of creates a little bit of a boundary, I think, for the person, because then they're not like face to face with me. And so that's a great avenue if you've got that.
Yeah. So she's Aubrey Ray.
Aubrey Ray, yes, Rae on Facebook.
This is Padma and Patricia Borrego on Facebook. So look forward to hearing you and supporting